The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Typhone. Typhone is a dramatically better digital banking provider. Our appeal is unique. We collaborate closely with our customers and the banking ecosystem in an open approach coupled with a powerful user experience that helps get things done. On our podcast, you will hear how digital banking plays a leading role for community-minded financial institutions from the unique perspectives of our industry expert guests.
All right, welcome to a very special episode of the Digital Banking Podcast, our first video podcast. I'm your host, Josh DeTar, and today I am super excited to have a very close friend, Brian Orta from BDI on the show. Brian, thanks for coming and hanging out with me today.
Hey, Josh, I think it was a bold choice having me on for video, but let's see how this goes.
You know, they said to pick the prettiest person I knew, so it was an obvious choice.
I have a face for radio.
Well, to give our audience a little bit of background on yourself, can you tell them about some of your past experience and what a day-to-day life looks like for you?
Yeah, actually, like a few other guests that I've heard on your podcast, I sort of got into this industry by accident. I live in a little town called Moorpark, California, where a core called XP Systems was located. And my mom got hired there as a temp when I was in high school for their Y2K project. And went from temp to full-time. And just like that, she was in the credit union world. And then a little startup came out of XP Systems called Digital Insight. And Digital Insight was the next town over in Westlake Village. And just like that, I found myself in high school knowing a lot of prominent credit union CEOs, company CEOs. And that's why I say it was sort of by accident, but I couldn't see myself anywhere else.
You know, it's funny. As we've done this podcast, I feel like I've talked to so many people whose stories are very similar when it comes to the credit union industry. Like I just kind of stumbled into it and then I never managed to stumble out.
Yeah.
I'm in.
It's the biggest small industry on the planet. It just has this charming gravity to it. Once you get to know people and meet people and do some networking, you start to realize it really is unique, right? No industry is perfect, but there is a charming component to the credit union industry and the stories and the people that you get to meet along the way.
Oh yeah. And I know for a fact that you probably have stories for days on this industry. Going back to, like you said, you know, your mom was in this industry. And I think there's some infamous story about a picture at Star One. I don't know. I don't know if we have time for that today.
That's probably one of the best pranks I've ever played on my mom. She didn't find it so funny, but the credit union did, and so did I. So,
I mean, that's all that matters at the end of the day, right?
That's right.
She still loves you. She'll still have you over for Thanksgiving.
I think.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we get too far, you know, for folks who maybe aren't aware of BDI, can you tell us a little bit about the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So BDI is a traditional print and mail statement vendor. We also have an e-statements platform. BDI is a really, really interesting company. I've known them for a really long time through the online banking years. Unique from all of their competitors in a few distinct ways. But it all comes from the CEO, Paul Holtzman. He was the founder. He still owns 100% of the company. He's still a very active CEO and involved in the day-to-day stuff. And the company has no debt, you know, just one of those stories that you used to hear years ago and now just sort of unique. So really fun place to be.
That's awesome. Well, I know the very first thing that I wanted to talk to you about because, you know, one of the things I always look forward to every year is conference season. Yeah. Because that means you and I get together and you get to watch me eat pancakes. But we didn't get that this year, right? Yeah. So how are you feeling about the fact that thanks to that thing we call a global pandemic, we haven't had an opportunity to do a lot of the traditional networking that we would do?
Yeah, you know, selfishly, like you were saying, like, you know, we'll go out and have a good meal, or sometimes it's a one-person pancake eating contest. You always win and lose. But you know, aside from the fun stuff and getting to connect with friends, you know, networking is so important. Like I said, this is the biggest small industry. And, I view networking different than most of the traditional sales guys where you're just sort of walking the room looking for someone that wants to buy your stuff. Mostly what I enjoy about this is you get to see someone you haven't seen in a while and, hey, what's your credit union working on? Oh, you know who you should meet. And then you make an introduction to another vendor or another company that you know, and you're just sort of helping dots connect themselves in the room. And that's something that's really missing. We may feel the effects of that for a while, especially in this emerging data analytics age where everyone seems to need to get into it. And there's 1,000 players springing up that do data analytics and the like. And, there's just a lot of dots that need to be connected. And, it's going to be something we've got to catch up on.
That's a really good point. I mean, you think about, credit unions are kind of in a very pivotal time right now, where they have a really major opportunity to shine during this pandemic. But they're going to need fantastic technology to do that, to bring that relationship building user experience of in-branch networking activities between credit unions and members to the digital world. So they're needing to go more digital and more techie than ever, but we're not getting those opportunities to kind of do that. Oh, have you met at conferences? So how do you see that, affecting their ability to move fast and connect with some of these new cool fintechs?
Well, first, I think the first in-person conference that we all get to go to is going to be like the biggest, best high school reunion you've ever heard of. Everyone's going to be so excited to see everybody and catch up and what have you been up to? Because, we all try and you can only make so many phone calls a day to catch up with people, but invariably you miss somebody or you have to cut off a conversation short because you got to jump into a meeting. But, in the meanwhile, me being someone that's really socially connective, what's been effective for me is like what you're doing now with this podcast. There's these new sources that are coming up that aren't the traditional sales pitch, if you will. And they're not just scripted. It's got to be choreographed and done right. But also webcasts. I'm a sucker for webcasts. So, I sit in on webcasts that otherwise has nothing to do with statements. You know me, I'm a sucker for any sort of topic in the credit union world. So I find myself sitting in on these webcasts that I get an invite for a virtual teller platform as an example, and I'll learn something. So I'm trying to bridge the gap while we're out of this conference season, but I feel like I'll gain something along the way, but I can't wait to get back to business as usual.
What kinds of things have you seen come out of some of those virtual conferences that you've done? Has there been anything that you're like, oh, you know what? That's actually pretty cool. Like we should continue doing that.
Yeah. I guess the best one that I've been to, and I'm not a big fan of plugging brand names or credit unions on these things, but Correlation did a wonderful job on their virtual conference. And part of the reason why was there weren't really any restrictions as a vendor, as it should be when you attend an event. If you want to go sit in on a session, you should be able to do that. Correlations never stop you from that in person, and they didn't stop you from that in the virtual conference. And also, anytime someone came into your virtual booth, which I hate doing that in the Air Bunnies, because it's not a virtual booth, it's just a chat room. But you could see that they were in there, right? As opposed to other conferences where you might have 15 people in your booth, but you can't see them until they actually send you a little chat message to engage you in conversation. It just feels creepy, like you're this hidden behind this curtain. And I don't know, it felt really uncomfortable for most of those platforms.
It's funny, as soon as you started saying like, well, I don't want to plug anybody, but there was one, I was like, oh man, Correlation was really good. I'd give them a shout out for that.
Yeah.
They did a really good job. I was texting with Jeff Dent from Correlation through that. And he was like, oh, I don't know. How do you think it's going? I was like, no, seriously. I think it's going really, really well. This has actually been probably one of the better virtual conferences we've ever done. And especially this year. So, we're trying to find these ways to replicate some of the elements of the in-person conferences. But I think one of the things that I'm hoping we start to do as events go virtual even into next year, right? I mean, GAC is going to be virtual already. and which don't even get me started. I don't know how that's going to work, right? Hike the hill digitally. But they're going digital, but we're trying to replicate exactly what we did in physical in digital.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to do this, we really need to think outside the box and say, okay, we have to do it just totally different. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Right. A good example of that is online banking versus in branch. Right. Could you imagine making somebody stand in line to log in? I mean, that'd be absurd. So obviously it has to be contextually appropriate. So I think just breaking the conference model altogether and building something out of scratch, purpose driven for a virtual experience is really what needs to happen. And I have no idea what that means, but I just know trying to replicate in person to online just is a broken experience after doing 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely want to make sure it is well stated, right? I'm throwing out there that it needs to be done different. I have no idea what that means, and I'm not stepping up to the plate to offer the solution. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, it's tough for everybody, right? And I think that's one of the things that that I at least appreciate is that we're kind of all in the same boat, right? So it's not that, one particular industry or one particular credit union or one particular vendor is dealing with this, challenge on their own.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I thought there was another conference, I won't mention their name, but there was a virtual happy hour. And I thought, well, that's interesting. When I registered, it asked, there was a sponsor that was mailing out this snack box, and you could check the box and they'll mail it out to you. And then you have this snack box and there's some stuff inside you can enjoy while sitting in this chat room at your desk or at home. And, I thought, well, let's give it a shot. You can't complain about something if you haven't tried it. So I click the box and conference comes around and I'm a vendor and I register for the happy hour and I get kicked out. I get, denied invitation because, oh, sorry, there's limited space. And this is really for credit union attendees. And you go, limited space? What is this, an 8.5 by 11 room? I thought this was a virtual experience. Would you run out of server space? I mean, how could you run out of space in a virtual experience? And then to add to that, the snack box arrives 3 weeks after the conference and you go, yeah, I guess.
What was this for?
Like, why on earth did I get Cheez-Its? I don't, seems kind of broken. So, oh well. But, you got to try it and you got to have an open mind and hope for the best, but it didn't go over so well.
It's rough, man. I mean, it's a rough world. We've been thinking about how do we redo some of the, the traditions that have become a part of, what we do every year for things like our customers or prospective customers. And you're like, oh, well, nope, can't do that anymore. We've got to think about that one a little bit differently. And, but it's also been really interesting. We had one institution that that really recently joined the Typhoon family, Emprise Bank out of Kansas, and shout out to Shelby and the team. Love you guys. But it was really interesting going through the evaluation process with them, and they made a comment at one point. They said, traditionally for a tier 1 large scale contract like this, you guys would have been on site 10 plus times. Yeah. Like you would have been out here a lot. And we've never met one of them in person. But what I thought was really cool was they really embraced the, hey, we're virtual, but building a relationship with a potential partner is really important to us. So we're going to put the effort in. And so every single meeting, they were all on camera. That's and awesome. We'd have 40, 50 people on camera. Yeah. We felt like we actually got to know them through that. We did do a virtual happy hour and we got to meet everybody's dogs and kids and it was actually really awesome. And then I got to thinking about it and I was like, you know what, even if we had met in person, like I never would have met Shelby's new puppy.
Yeah. It's more humanizing, right?
But it was, It's interesting. I think, I know I was talking to somebody about this recently as well. I think that's one of the things that I really hope sticks out of COVID is this idea that we are actually people.
Yeah.
We're human behind this, right? We were making the joke before we even started this podcast. I was like, I got to throw the dogs outside. Otherwise, Amazon's going to come 4 times during this. And, Frankie's going to attempt to bark as much as a French bulldog possibly can. But that's life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my life. My wife's probably going to walk by in the background. And I think that's one of the things that I thought's been pretty cool coming out of this is we're all trying to figure this out together, right? We're all on these video conferences. We're all on these Zoom meetings. And where in the past, I would have been really embarrassed if a dog barked or if somebody walked behind me. But now it's like, well, my dog barked, but on the last meeting, your kid threw something, through your computer screen, and it's okay. Like we're all people. And so I think it's, while we're not getting that, kind of tangible in-person interaction, relationship building, I feel like we're also seeing people in a different way. And I hope that stays. Like, I hope when we go back to in-person meetings, people are okay with being like, hey, you know what? You're on a demo in a t-shirt and sweatpants and your dog's barking in the background, but it's cool. I don't know. So
I'll share a positive
what have you guys
experience
found
through COVID of engaging. So my wife and I are big into wine, absolutely love wine. One of our favorite wineries in Napa is called Beret. It's Candace Cameron Beret. It's her family. So they have this young lady, Camille, who runs their tasting room. And Camille is, you meet her today, she's your best friend, right? Anytime you're going up there, hey, what new restaurants? And I'll get you in contact with Bob. You can have a table for 2 at the window. She just goes out of her way to connect you with things that are not just her product or her wine, right? So I believe this was in June. And obviously the wine industry has been largely shut down. There's not people going into tasting rooms in Napa, which is a big deal for them. So arriving at our front door, unbeknownst to us, is a box with 3 bottles of wine in it. And you go, well, we have random wine show up every once in a while. So I asked my wife, like, did you order? I didn't order anything. So you open it up and there's 3 bottles, and 2 of them have labels on them, just like a normal bottle of wine. And the third one, nothing, no label, just a glass wine bottle with wine in it and a cork. You can't tell if it's red or white because it's a really dark bottle. And right on top of the 3 bottles is a handwritten card, and it says, thank you for being a loyal long-term customer. We're going to be hosting a virtual tasting with the owner, Val Beret, who's a professional hockey player. And Val's going to do the tasting with you. And it's just a chance to connect and have wine. It's like on a Friday at 4:00. And if you can't join us, enjoy the 3 bottles on us. But if you can join us, we will tell you what's in that 3rd bottle. And you want to talk about an audience that was so eager to join a Zoom call because I want to know what's in there. Like, I don't want to skip ahead now. I want to wait and do all of this with the owner of the winery because I want to find out what's in there. And is there any left? Can we buy some? Is it delicious? It was such a unique and interesting way to not only surprise me with something that was unexpected, but then pique my interest long enough to wait the week and a half for the virtual tasting and then wait to actually do the tasting. It was so well done.
That's genius.
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of cool stuff that I love to see when people really do. They think completely outside the box and surprise you. And you're like, you know what? That's really cool. And that would be a fun thing I would do no COVID. I mean, that would be exciting to, hey, what's in this mystery bottle of booze? I don't know. Sounds like a dangerous event also, but a ton of fun. I don't know.
HR might have an issue with that.
Friday at 4. What types of other things have you been seeing as you've been sitting in on all these different, virtual webinars and things? Anything catch your eye lately?
Obviously the print and statement world, we've got all kinds of fun stuff that's always going on. In general, I think is what you're asking. I'm really fascinated with what's happening in the data analytics space. Because it's not taking the traditional path that most product groups take in the credit union world, like online banking. You work with somebody that's worked with other credit unions before. Data is data. It doesn't matter if you're taking it from a phone system, from an online banking, or from healthcare. it's data. It's ones and zeros. And what you do with that, that's really where the magic happens. So you're seeing some QSOs that are trying to do it organically from within the industry. I think Rate Reset is doing a phenomenal job. They win QSO award after QSO award. CU Rise is doing really cool stuff. And then outside of the space, you're seeing others that are writing algorithms that, they're finding there's tremendous value. And, their sort of hurdle is proving to a credit union that they understand the credit union world, that why are you coming from some other space? So it's really kind of fascinating to watch, not only the use cases and what problems can be solved, but how there is this convergence all coming towards the data. Because I'll go back to the wine example. I view the credit union database as a vineyard in Napa, right? And imagine you have 10 acres of premium grapes in Napa and they're not being harvested. And all of the neighbors are making wine at $400 a bottle. And everyone's scratching their head going, why isn't that getting harvested? And that's why Amazon and Google and Walmart, they all want into the banking space, because there is such a rich set of data. And, we all hear credit unions talk about how they don't want to be sales. But if a consumer needs a financial product, that's service. So why don't you call it cross-service? Your consumer needed access to capital and you proactively found a solution for them. That's not sales. That's solving problems. So I'm really fascinated by what's happening in the data space.
Quick sidebar, you made the comment, there's those people that you probably don't talk to as often as you should, but you run into at the conference and you're like, hey, that's Karan.
Yeah.
As soon as you said see your eyes, I was like, oh man, that's one of those people that, I don't talk to that often, but every time I see him at a conference, you could pick him out from like 14 aisles away,
right,
and run up and give him a big hug, So
yeah, Karan's one of those people that I think I've spent time in person with him probably 3 or 4 times, and have been on the phone with him, I don't know, probably 6 or 7. But JC, on the other hand, JC is like personal friends with them. They live near each other, and Karan works with JC's wife's credit union. So yeah, worst case scenario, if I don't know somebody, JC does.
Yeah. I tell you what, it is such a small, big world. And I think that's one of the things that I love most about this. And actually, not to toot your own horn for you, but, that was one of the things that I just really appreciated about you when I first met you, was that genuine love for just connecting people. And so, I guess maybe now would be a great time to give you a public thank you for just what you did for me early on coming into this industry and helping to connect me to people who are really passionate about what they do and really working to make this a better ecosystem. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I feel awkward accepting the compliment. I mean, obviously you can't make a good person a good person.
It doesn't come with a bottle of unlabeled wine. Sorry.
Yeah, well, we'll have to fix that. No, but you can't make a good person. That's all your work, and what you've done has been amazing, and what Typhoon's doing for credit unions is amazing. So that's why I feel a little uncomfortable accepting it, but thank you.
Yeah. Well, so back to, what you were talking about on data and analytics. I'm with you. I think this is probably one of the most fascinating things that's happening right now in our industry. And it's so interesting to see the different places that different institutions are at in their journey.
Yeah.
Everybody's in the journey, whether you realize it or not. Like you said, you all have that field of grapes. It's just, do you even realize that you own a field of grapes?
Yeah.
Are you, trying to, get that first batch growing, or are you already harvesting? Everybody's in this game. It's just, at what stage are you at?
Yeah.
Actually, the last podcast that I did was with Andrew Bertrand from our community credit union.
Oh yeah.
They're a mid-sized credit union, yeah. 500 million in assets ish, in a small town in Shelton, Washington, and they're absolutely killing it, right? And it's not because they have a tremendous amount of resources or a boatload of capital to go and do this. They've just made it a part of their strategy,
right? And
they've done it for years before it was even the thing. Right. And so it was fascinating talking to him and just hearing about the different things that he's starting to see now that they have these, data systems and analytics in play. And it was really crazy to talk to him about, his approach to how he was presenting data at the credit union.
Mm.
So, he gave the example of, he was like, I want to go in and I want to talk about a very kind of, you got to look out there and you got to pull it all together to make it fit, correlation between these two things. He's like, so I'll start with some fun data that we get that is, going to get people kind of juices flowing for data. And he was like, so, we would talk about how, he's like, I have data that tells you how many people use the drive-through, the ATM, in-branch, digital, based on how much it's raining right now in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so he was like, everybody on staff thinks that really interesting, right? Because, it's the Pacific Northwest. It rains all the time. So that's something that's on our minds. And then he can say, okay, so you saw how the data shows when it rains a ton, less people come into the branches because they don't want to get out of their car. Drive-through picks up, digital banking picks up, in-branch decreases. Sun comes out, in-branch goes up, drive-through decreases, right? And that's a really easy correlation for people to then make. They're like, oh yeah, I don't want to get out of my car when it's dumping buckets on me either. Yeah. And then he can go into, but also here's how our data shows that we have this subset of members that, to your point, they really need this product or service as a service, not as an upsell, not as a sleazy, we're just trying to, grow more loans or whatever. This is actually a service that our members can benefit from.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. It's actually a really fun example, right? Just rain and how that might shift someone's behavior, even for someone who lives in the Pacific Northwest, where if you're not used to rain, you probably don't live there anymore, but behavior still shifts, right? And that's one of those examples where you go, yep. Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. But did anybody have a business plan around that? No. I mean, it wasn't until it was actually presented to them where they go, well, wait a second. Yeah, actually, maybe we could make ourselves more efficient. Maybe we don't need 7 tellers standing at empty teller lines in the branch. We could have them working on other things that's more satisfying for them and more beneficial for the members.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of conversations have you been having with people around what they're doing in data? Like, why is this all of a sudden become your new, tell me more?
I just, some from my previous life consulting projects and people that I've met, and in my personal life, folks that are doing data analytics projects. As an example, I've got a buddy who their engine is used for the next best cross-sell on Amazon. People that watch this video should think about these shows and Netflix. All that's done on their platform. So I love having conversations with him because he is everywhere but banking. And I guess this shouldn't be a surprise to you, but the biggest credit unions in our industry are all proactively contacting his company, right? The big don't get big by accident. So, while there's some credit unions that wait for a marketing email or an invite to a webinar, the big ones are proactively pursuing this. So I love hearing conversations with friends like that in the data world outside of the credit union space of, things that they've learned, right? Not every pursuit is going to be profitable, but you can learn from everything. So it's kind of fun to hear some of those stories. So I think that's partially where the fascination came from, both consulting and from, my personal or professional network. So
if I might infer, I think one of the other things that I've heard you talk about why that's exciting to you too, is you look at the big companies, the Amazons, the Netflixes, right? They didn't get big by accident either. Right. Why do you shop on Amazon? I was talking to somebody the other day and he said, I know you can get it on Wayfair. I know I could go here for this and I could probably save a few bucks by going to this. He's like, but you know what? I'm just going to go to Amazon. I know they'll have it. I know it's on Prime. I know I'll get it tomorrow. You know what? I may pay a couple of extra bucks. I may, whatever it may be, but I can go to one place. I can get it. It's convenient. I know how it works.
Yeah.
These guys are taking a tremendous amount of data on our behavior and they're spinning up incredible user experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And we as the credit union industry, a lot of times are looking at them like, they're this golden apple of, oh my gosh, we should be doing that. Like, I wish we had that kind of data to know, what our members are looking for in their user experience. But the truth is, we do.
Yeah.
The credit union industry probably has more data on their members than Amazon does on me as a consumer of retail products.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And granted, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, so a lot of what I'm going to say is not news to you. But yeah, there's no topic more personal to an American consumer than their personal finances, which is why Apple wants to know where you bank and what you're spending money on, and Amazon wants to know what you're spending money on. They want to get themselves one step closer and one step closer and one step closer to get closer and closer to that garden that you're protecting, right? And that garden is at the credit union. So, when you and I did this a couple of years ago, when we were doing the messaging exercise for Typhone, and, one of the things that we talked about was all the major big companies that have sprung up in the last 10 years. I shouldn't say all, but most, they didn't build something per se, but what they did was they changed distribution, right? Amazon's made tablets and things like that now, right? So they've, an Alexa, they've made some things. But initially, what made them billions and billions of dollars was just changing distribution. You need to consume stuff, companies need to sell you stuff, and they just changed the interaction of how that happened. And they had to add a value. So what was that value? It was 2-day free shipping. Oh, really? Oh, well, I'm impulsive. So give me the satisfaction of appeasing my compulsion by clicking buy now, right? So there you go. You've pleased me with my need to have something now. It's not going to arrive for 48 hours, but I got a little bit of that dopium now, and I get more of it when it arrives. And, the doorbell rings and the dog barks and I'm on a conference call, but hey, it's 10:30. I get to open a box now. So, they've actually doubled the satisfaction experience, because I could buy it now and be impulsive, and I get to get that same satisfaction when I open it a couple days later. And did they make the pair of shoes? No. They didn't make the box, the packaging, nothing. They simply just changed distribution.
So the $1 billion question is, what do we need to do to change distribution between credit unions and members?
Well, I got a lot of ideas. I even pursued a startup years ago, CU Wallet, that was pursuing some of this, but it has to be genuine. You have to genuinely want to make the consumer's life better, in this case, the member's life. If this is just for making money and qualifying for a bonus and things like that as an employee of a financial institution, consumers are going to smell that out. They're going to go somewhere else. But, credit unions are already doing some things like rewards on their credit cards and things like that. But, think about being able to engage with small businesses in your community, right? How many credit unions do you know of in the last 5 years that have said we're going into business banking? Like, how valuable for that little mom and pop sandwich shop to say, we have 10,000 of our members that go to Subway 3 times a week, right? Small example, it takes a little effort, but how profound would that be for that small business? And how endeared would that credit union be to that small business if you're actually able to help them grow? And by the way, the consumer got a better sandwich. So if it's a genuine pursuit, I think there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I was talking to Mitch from Credit Union of Colorado on our first podcast. And, he made the comment that when COVID hit, careful with my wording here, but, he was excited that his credit union didn't have to do anything different.
Oh, that's awesome.
He said, not from operational elements and things like that, but he said, our value proposition to our members doesn't change.
Right.
The way that we take care of you in a global pandemic when you need us most is actually the way we still took care of you December of 2019. Right. So we didn't have to all of a sudden say, oh my gosh, we have to be better about taking care of our communities.
Yeah.
They were already embedded in supporting their local communities. And I thought that was a really insightful, thought that you guys are already incredibly well positioned to support communities. And that's one of the things that I really value about this industry is the way that it does have boots on the ground support for our communities. And man, I tell you what, small business is probably one of the biggest areas that needs that right now. Right.
Yeah.
Oregon's going into another lockdown as we're recording this episode, starting today for 2 weeks, and restaurants can do takeout only again. Right. So these small businesses are struggling.
Yeah.
That's a really cool opportunity for credit unions to step up and continue to support those communities and those businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. If again, it's one of those things that, the members eating the sandwich and the small business owner needs to sell sandwiches. And, similar to what we were talking about earlier about networking at a conference, I mean, is there a personal benefit for me being the matchmaker between the two? No. But are you a valuable part of the community now because you're helping consumers find what they need? Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of those things it'll never show up on a balance sheet, unless you win the banking business of that sandwich shop. But, are you endeared to the community? Yeah, absolutely. If you weren't there, would the community notice? If the answer to that is no, then are you really a profound part of the credit? If you just close that branch and a Dunkin' Donuts went in, people are like, yay, Dunkin' Donuts. What was there before? You're probably not actually serving your community.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty harsh, bold, but true statement. Amber, our friend Amber from Prodigy, and I were talking about that. I mean, she's probably one of the most diehard supporters of the importance of a credit union in a small community I think I've ever met. Yeah. And she talked about that. What happens to that community when they lose a community-minded FI?
Yeah.
Right. And it gets taken over by somebody who really and truly is just looking at it from a balance sheet perspective. Right. Yeah. Those members of that community now have a gap. And it was really interesting when we were talking about it. I started doing some research around it, and the ramifications aren't just as simple as those members now have to go look for a new primary FI. I mean, a lot of times they're forced to then go cash their paychecks at the grocery store, right? Yeah. Or, take out cash back at the grocery store. Well, now that grocery store suffers because a ton of people are coming in and buying $1 stick of gum to get $100 cash back.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot that just connects this ecosystem of community FIs to that community.
Yeah. It's there's the opportunities are endless. You just think about, I can say personally, some of the most profound innovations that I've seen in my life are things that I probably was just mildly annoyed by, but you had to do it 10 times a week. And then all of a sudden somebody changes it and you're like, why didn't I think of that? It's that simple as just think about what annoys you or what's irritating, or, is it just a mild nuisance? And how often do you have to do that? There's probably an opportunity to improve someone else's life, unless you're a complete weirdo like me and you have your own idiosyncrasies. It's actually funny. We have a big client that in the midst of the whole shutdown, and I'll divert on to a different story now, but I think it was like 1 month into the lockdown in California, and they're down in San Diego, and I said, so how are we doing with shelter in place? And it was like everybody unmuted, all at the same time. You go, whoa, okay, all right, maybe we'll start at this one at a time. Diane, you first. And she's talking, there's a dog barking in the background, like you were saying, right? My dog's going blind and it barks every time something moves out of the window and the wind's blowing today. And you hear all these people say, well, I can't stand this, I don't know how. And I'm like, and they go, how about you? And I said, well, apparently I've been sheltering in place for 15 years because I work from home and the grocery store's right. Not a whole lot has changed. So I'm a weirdo. So knowing that I'm a weirdo a lot of times when I look at certain things that irritate me, I'm like, I wonder if this is just me. or I wonder if this is everybody. But, people that know me know I'm weird.
But that's a good thought, right? I mean, how many times do a lot of times we sit there and say, this is annoying to me, or I wish there was a better way, but I'm probably the only one. And in reality, there's millions of us sitting there saying that. And sometimes, those things become the catalyst for the next big thing, right? You think about the catalyst for mobile banking, right? What do you mean? Now I can sit at home in my pajamas and deposit a check right here from my phone?
Yeah.
This is fantastic. Absolutely, I'm signing up for that, right? So I think a lot of times those things become the thing that creates a complete radical change in how we're able to service our consumers.
So it's such a profound point. Think about that from a vendor perspective, right? Or even from a credit union perspective, as you're doing an RFP searching for a new vendor. One of the questions that used to drive me nuts, and now there's actually a good reason why it drove me nuts, so I was weird ahead of my time, but one of the questions would be, share your 5-year development roadmap. And some of these big companies, they're, Fortune 500 companies, publicly traded, and they have, more product managers than we have employees. So, they have stuff like that. And, I sort of asked the question back, like, how can you plan 5 years in advance for innovation? Are you that good? I mean, did you see remote deposit capture coming in 2004 before the iPhone was even out? I mean, BlackBerries were still barely emerging and you saw remote deposit capture coming? Or is it more honestly and more likely the case that it just came out and now you have to stick it at the end of your 5-year development roadmap, which means your customers are going to wait 5 years? Or a bad case scenario is you're going to blow up this document that you just spent hours and weeks and months creating, and now you're going to blow it up because something surprised you and you got to shoehorn it in somewhere. So there's not a lot of good answers for a company that claims they have a 5-year development roadmap, because you simply just don't know how fast something's going to come up on you.
It's funny you mentioned that. One of the guests I'd love to have at some point is actually our VP of product management, Ulas.
Oh yeah.
Just because he's one of my favorite people to talk to internally. Yeah. He's a hardcore bird watcher, avid nature enthusiast. And it's fascinating to hear him talk about the correlations between user experience and technology and the animal kingdom. And I mean, he's one of those people that you can just, get a big bowl of popcorn and just sit there and listen to. But anyway, where I'm going with this is, it was funny. We recently responded to an RFP from a credit union that they asked for, I think it was even further than a 5-year roadmap. And Ulas was assigned that question for the RFP. And he called me, and I mean, I must have just got him at the right time, and he was just in that fiery mood, And he was like, what are they talking about 5 years? He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do 12 months from now. He's like, if it takes me 5 years to get something off of our product roadmap, he's like, you should fire me. But it's true. You've probably heard Siva say this in the past, right? Digital needs to move at the pace of digital, not at the pace of banking. Yeah. No offense. We love you guys to death, but this industry a lot of times moves very slow. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Absolutely. There are benefits to having some of these massive organizations in our industry, and they do a lot of good, and they bring about a lot of things, but they're also really hard to steer those ships when something that you just could not anticipate comes out. And that's why I think it's really important to have this plethora of different types of companies in our industry that actually work very collaboratively together to create a stronger ecosystem. Yeah. Hey, I will take care of, the big immovable object elements of servicing a financial institution. You guys go, play around in the sandbox and maybe get lucky and discover some gold hiding in there and go to town on it. Right.
In the tech world, I think of, this is a long time ago now, 15 years ago, when a bank or a credit union would ask, can we change this or can we change that? And a lot of times the answer was, that's hard coded. Could you imagine giving that answer today? Sorry, that's hard coded. But it was the buzzword for an endemic problem then that we're now aware of, right? You've got to be agile. You've got to be able to change things, right? APIs have really, really brought the industry a long way because, like you're saying, there might be a new vendor that the client's working with, and they want to have a small plugin in the online banking. You go, yeah, not a problem. Let's just get us on the phone together. We'll sort it out. We've got a couple ways to do it. Let's figure out what works best for everybody versus, I need you to fill out this form. I got to send this to my product management team. And then we'll hear back. Well, how long does that take? Probably 6 months or so. What? No, like, so in the old days, the whole hard coded just was unacceptable. Now, not willing to work with a vendor would be unacceptable, let alone turnaround times, right? You've got to be able to do it in weeks and not months, let alone a year. So at least on the online experience, right? Consumer expectations just change so fast. Right. There are certain vendors that just don't have to move that fast because their platform or their technology doesn't get directly interacted with by consumers. But those that do, if a consumer is actually putting their hands on your platform, it's got to change quickly.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw you a super hot potato.
Okay.
I think that's one of the big reasons we're starting to see a lot of asks from the industry to have more internal resources at the credit union that are development resources. And we're starting to see a lot more asks for things like SDKs. And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, one, I love it, right? Because that tells me credit union expectations have gone up, right? Which makes everybody better. Some of them are realizing what that costs. Right. So, sometimes as a vendor, you're like, it's going to cost, you call it like $6,000. They're like, $6,000. You're like, well, could you hire somebody for a month for less than that has this sort of programming capabilities? So, it's educating the credit union side to realize how expensive some of these wants or needs are. So both sides get better. That being said, some credit unions can afford to do that in-house, whether they hire or contract or whatever it might be. And then there are some vendors that just do it so well for the credit union as a third party, and they can just structure it as a project. QTech comes to mind. I mean, those guys, they can do stuff not only fast, and they understand the credit union world so well, and they're so capable that for some of those credit unions that can't afford to bring the resources in-house, it's a really, really good option and very viable. And they've done it for hundreds, if not thousands of credit unions. So this isn't their first rodeo, right? They're not creating a program for you that does day, month, or month, day, year, day, month, year. Like it's developed in a third world, and now you've got to in QA clean up half the work, right? They understand the context of what is supposed to happen, not just read specs, build product. So, for those that can't afford it, there's some really, really cool options for project type development.
One of the things that I've started to see a lot lately that's been pretty cool too is starting to see credit unions get some folks on staff that are just really experts at manipulating their core.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty rad stuff that's coming out of having somebody who understands the business knowledge of this is the type of way that we formulate relationships with our members. These are the types of services that they're looking for. And here's how I can bridge the gap and make changes to our core to support that. That's been pretty cool. I tell you what, and you're starting to see that with, as some of these cores are modernizing as well, giving the credit unions more flexibility to do that.
Well, what's even more fascinating, because I completely agree, is this is where you're starting to see a big divergence in the average credit union and the average community bank. Because banks for the longest time have been all about ROI, right? Does it make sense? Let's do it, right? And from a tech perspective, you're like, oh, well, we can't build the interface. We don't care. We'll hire somebody at minimum wage to download the file, upload it to the core, and we can make money on this, so we don't care if there's an interface or not. And in large part, good for them. They're trying to solve a problem. They're trying to do it quickly, and they're not going to get caught up in the technical details. But credit unions care about that extra level of detail, the elegance in the experience, and how do things work well together or don't work well together. And I think, as we're talking about the emerging data age, I think credit unions will probably be better poised to handle some of those things. Now, there is a reluctance to take risk from a credit union perspective. So you hear a lot of credit unions say, well, call us when you have 5, 7, 10 credit unions that are already doing this. Whereas a bank's like, we can make what on this? Do it. Guys, figure it out. Get this done. I want it live in 2 months. Right. So there's definitely this different mentality, and it's interesting to see how it plays out. But I think credit unions care more about the details. And I think that might matter more when we get into the emerging information age.
Yeah, that makes me think, I think that's one of the other unique benefits that credit unions just ornately have. You think about some of these companies that have become extremely successful in their user experience, right? And it's because they approach it with the end user in mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that may mean that they've got to do some cleanup on the back end or whatever, but let's just make it a seamless, really easy experience for our end user. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of industries, there's a lot of companies that don't do a great job of it. They're like, well, this is what our process is on paper, so digitize it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, this is an absolutely broken experience. It's terrible. It's painful. The abandonment is ridiculous. But yes, you solved the check mark the box.
Yeah.
But credit unions traditionally approach everything from, what does this mean for my member? So they always have that member lens on. Right. So when they look at experience, they come at it from an end user perspective. And I think that gives them a leg up.
I'm looking at my desk because I actually have an example of exactly what that means in my world.
Of course you do.
Because JC and I just went through this. So do the details matter? You mentioned user experience. First off, I think user experience was inappropriately applied to just technology platforms. While that's important, right? What do you feel, or what's your experience when you're logging into online banking, or doing this or doing that? Yeah, all that's important. But from a marketing perspective, anything that credit union's logo is on, user experience is involved. Unless it's just going in a file cabinet, there is a user, a consumer touching it. The experience matters, right? So we believe that even goes to the paper statement, right? So like think modern experience, right? Could you imagine one of your clients spending all the money that they did and all the effort to go live with online banking, and then that next month then they send out their statements to their members and it looks like this? Like, seriously? This is something that actually gets mailed out to thousands of consumers right now. This is their current statement, right? Doesn't this feel more modern to you, right? Targeted marketing.
Yep. FICO
score, account summaries. Like, user experience matters. Details matter, right? I mean, imagine if this is my favorite. The credit union actually said, well, yeah, I think this is a credit union. They actually said, oh, no, we do targeted marketing on our statements. You want to see what it looks like? There you go. Yep.
You can't see me, but I'm squinting.
Oh, no. Yeah, I can see you. That's a pre-printed shell. This is what our statement industry used to do. Pre-printed shell, you see the lines, right? And the statement vendor will call you at the end of the year and they'll go, we really should print another 200,000 of these so you have enough inventory for next year. And then at the end of the month, you send them data and the data lands within the pre-printed shell. And then the credit union goes, wait a second, there's a compliance change. We have to add a disclosure in the middle. And you go, but we have pre-printed shells. So we're actually now breaking up your data. And you go, how on earth are you sending this to a consumer when you just put all that time, money, and effort into a new online experience? And you didn't think user experience went to anything else that your logo was on? I mean, would you put your logo on a terrible pen that breaks the third time you use it? Probably not. So yeah, the details matter.
It is. And I think that's one of the things that's also happening right now with, especially if you look at digital banking, right? no shameless plug for what we do, but it's a hub for so many darn things anymore. Right. I mean, the number of different partners that we integrate to, it just grows exponentially.
Yeah.
And every single one of those details matters. It's, oh gosh, who was I talking to? I want to give them the shout out. If I remember, I'm going to holler it out later. I was talking to a credit union and they said, our CEO is the type of CEO that will walk into a branch and like, we'll see that far desk in the corner, if he bends down to tie his shoe, he'll see the nest of cords under the desk. And that's unacceptable. Clean that up. Right?
Yeah.
So you put all of this work into, your branches, you put millions of dollars into designing new branches, into, creating the flow and the space and making sure it fits your brand. And then you do something like sending out a statement that just obliterates that, right? Or you have an integration to an old third party that the SSO is purple and your branding colors are blue.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You're like, purple and blue, they're pretty close, right? It'll work. But I want to make sure that I say that, I respect the challenge that credit unions have. You have so many of these different systems, and it is making sure that you look at each and every one with that same perspective, with that same lens, and say, hey, my members' experience matters. Are you cutting it?
Yeah.
Are you living up to the bar that's set by our best partner, by our best whatever foot forward of our brand is? So if that's your flagship branch, great. Does everything else that bears your logo live up to that?
Yeah. And I think that's why you're starting to see some credit unions hiring user experience officers, right? Again, the big credit unions didn't get big by accident, so they're doing it first. They have the budget to do it, and the willingness within the organization to make changes and ask tough questions. But I think you're seeing that start to take root across the industry, where if they can't hire somebody, then someone innately has that picky gene that they know what they like and don't like, and they're willing to say something. But that's how it happens.
Do you know Joel Swanson? I hope I didn't get that wrong.
I don't think so.
From ViStar?
I don't think so.
He used to be at Alaska USA. Follow that guy on LinkedIn. Oh my gosh. I'm going to get him on this podcast one day because it's just fascinating what that credit union has been doing. And he's obnoxiously awesome about posting all of that stuff on LinkedIn. And it's just been so cool to watch. And it is, you can tell they're like, oh, that one stone in the very back of our parking lot, go turn it over and see what's on the other side. Let's make sure that it meets our member experience expectations. Like, it's pretty impressive. Yeah. And I think that's to your point, right? Like, they brought somebody in specifically that's his goal. That's his focus. Yeah. He's going to look at all of those different elements and he's going to make sure this lives up to the ViStar brand. It's pretty cool.
He's like the personal trainer. Like, you're sort of annoyed when you see him. And like, every time he says something, you're like, oh, here we go. All right. What do we got to change now? But then you see the results at the end. You're like, hey, all right, bring Joel back around. I like the results.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, the moral of this story is this industry just has an amazing opportunity to have an incredible impact.
Yeah.
And I love seeing people capitalize on it. So, and I'm really honored to be a part of, an industry that's doing that. So, Brian, I mean, I could talk to you for the rest of the day, but I'm sure at some point I probably got to let you go back to, doing your real life. So any parting words of wisdom over your years in this industry or anything you'd like to leave us with?
Parting words of wisdom. I think, we talked about a lot of this stuff already, right? The details matter. Whether COVID has forced you to take another look from a credit union perspective at what some of those pain points are and what's sort of annoying. And now that you're stuck at your desk and not being able to go to conferences or, engage in the community, whatever role you might have at the credit union, some of those annoyances might be more regular annoyances. Think about those and think about how that could innovate or improve the life of your employees or your members, because again, it's those little annoyances that once improved, people go, hey, that's a lot better. I like this, right? It doesn't have to be big every time you make a change.
Yeah, I agree. Appreciate that. Brian, kind of to wrap up, maybe some final questions for you. So let's start with some of your favorite resources. What's your favorite online resource that you really rely on to keep you up to date on what's happening in our industry?
Yeah.
Where are you going for this wealth of knowledge?
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of a weirdo. So I do have some industry resources. I don't think there's anybody that does it better than CU Broadcast, right? It's our industry's YouTube. Mike is awesome, and he does a great job, and he's just so engaging and friendly, and you love to see him when you see him at conferences. So I think CU Broadcast is just always crushing it.
Yep.
CU Times, obviously. American Banker's done a good job of hosting a lot of podcasts lately. I know bankers are probably a bad word for credit unions, but follow them. They have some interesting stuff. And then outside of that, some of just regular business world stuff. I like knowing what's happening. My wife's a financial advisor, so I feel like on a daily basis, I need to know what happened in the marketplace, at least from a summary perspective. So I'm not the guy that can't talk to his wife at dinner about what her day looked like. So, just general business world stuff. And then I'm also big into volunteering my time. So I follow some local organizations, things happening in the community, things like that. So, maybe not directly related to what you're seeking here, but community is a big thing for me.
Awesome. And lastly, where can people go to connect with you?
Also where I'm a weirdo. So COVID has been really good at helping me understand how social I am and how social I want to be. It's also helped me analyze that social media isn't exactly social. You just post stuff out there, and this is from a series of experiences with two little kids, but I look through my posts and I go, this doesn't actually accurately represent my life. So what am I actually telling people about myself that's actually me? Not much. So I'm going old school. So I actually deleted Facebook. I deleted Instagram. And I would just say, if people want to find me, call me, email me. I'm on LinkedIn, and you go find me, you'll realize I'm terrible with LinkedIn. I'm there. There's probably an inch of dust on my profile. I don't even know what's in there, but contact me. borta@businessdatainc.com is my email address, or JC. Everybody knows JC Kovalevsky.
That's true.
And I'll do the bold, give out my cell phone on a podcast, 805-501-5155. Call me, text me, email. Let's interact like old school humans. And I think that's where the magic really happens when it comes to networking.
You're the man. I love it. Now I have to text you to get pictures of that ridiculously adorable family of yours.
Yeah, my little girl.
Two beautiful daughters. Oh my gosh. So, Brian, it's always so good to see you. I miss being able to actually see you in person at conferences. This will tide me over, though. So thank you so much for coming. Thanks for sharing some of just your insight and experience and bouncing ideas off of me. You are always a welcome guest around here. So thanks so much for joining me on the Digital Banking Podcast.
Thank you. And say hi to everybody at the Typhoon team for me.